Okay, excellent. So Dacio, today we're going to just do the English reading. Okay, and then if we complete Canto 3, we will go on and we'll do try to do a complete reading in Italian and in English for Canto 4.
What line? Canto 3.
First, we're going to read the whole thing,
Okay.
and then I believe. Let me get mine. Okay, so where am I? Here we go. I believe that we will start, since we want to talk about the great refuser and Celestine some more. We will start at line 58 when we go through our parsing today. Okay? Let me do this. And let me go here. All right, so for those of you who will be watching this video on YouTube, I want to let you know that we're continuing our work on Inferno Canto 3. Last time we got not quite halfway through it. Today we are going to start by reading the whole Canto 3 in English. And when we're done with that, we will go back and we will read small parts of Canto 3, probably starting at line 58. And then we will be discussing what we're reading along the way. If we complete our reading of Canto 3 today, we will do a first reading of Canto 4, hopefully in both Italian and in English. That being said, I'm going to line 58. When some among them I had recognized, I looked and I beheld the shade of him who made through cowardice the great refusal. Forthwith I comprehend and was certain that this sect was of the caitiff wretches, hateful to God and his enemies. And I'm going to stop here. And Dee Dee has said that she has something to say about the shade of him who made through cowardice the great refusal. So Dee Dee?
Okay, I'm going to tell you what Barolini wrote and what Longfellow, a commentator Longfellow quoted, said about Celestine. By withholding the soul's identity and guaranteeing the insoluble enigma that has resulted from his reticence. Pardon?
We had some sort of extraneous sound come in.
Oh, okay. The poet acts on and gives life outside the text to Virgil's injunction, let us not speak of them, but look and pass on. Although Dante has not been able to prevent scholarly discussion, he has ensured that all discourse regarding this figure remain hypothetical. And she adds, shadowed by the text contempt. Barolini thinks Dante is playing with our limited minds. And then Longfellow quotes a commentator on this. It's about in the Bible, Matthew 19:22. And this is quoted from the commentary. And there cannot be the slightest doubt of it. A young man came asking our Lord, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? And the man made the great refusal. I'm continuing the quote. It is the only instance recorded in the Gospels in which Jesus, looking on a man and loving him, asked him to become his friend and companion, but the glorious invitation was declined. So this is the ambiguity. Is it this refusal or Clementine's withdrawal from fast retirement from the papacy?
Okay, that's
Yeah,
great.
but this is also related to the Pope Celestine V that refused to continue as a pope, and then
It's related. It's
Yeah.
related, but what Barolini is arguing is that no one is sure, and there's much scholarly debate whether that is the case or not.
Okay.
Good. So I think one thing I should say for anybody who did not watch the reading previous to this, that it's important to know that we have just entered into the Inferno through the gate. And the first group that we encounter are the group which did not take a stand either for or against, that they were basic milquetoast throughout their life and refused to commit. And these people are running around. They are like a gigantic parade, and they have a banner, and they're running willy-nilly here and there, and they're being stung by many, many insects to the point to where there's blood running out of them. And this is to commemorate the fact that they did not take any stance during their life, and now this, because this is hateful behavior, they are in this weird antechamber of the Inferno, and they don't have any names. Unlike, Mhm.
I had a thought about that. That being uncommitted, that they are the enablers of the evildoers who are further down in the Inferno.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is, and as we talked about earlier, politically speaking, this is a lot of what's going on even today,
Oh, for sure.
where there's a relatively small group of people who actually pay attention to what's going on politically and economically, et cetera. And most of the people are just trying to stay out of sight.
And they're even holding their nose and voting, even though they have to hold their nose to do it.
Or they don't vote at all.
But a lot of them vote.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, that being said, I think that's enough of a framing. The real recommendation is, whenever possible, to go back and look at the earlier video and the reading of a canto and the discussion. It's helpful. That being said, I want to go once again, although Dante doesn't name him, and yes, there can be a lot of scholarly debate. At this particular time, I believe that from my small amount of study, that if you look at line 59, where it says, I looked and I beheld the shade of him who made through cowardice the great refusal. Okay. I think this is Celestine.
Celestine, yeah.
And Celestine's story is that he was a hermit monk for many decades. And when it came time to choose a new pope, that the cardinals or whoever was making the decision at that time could not make a decision. There was a lot of political infighting going on. So after trying many, many times, this is very reminiscent of something that happened in the House of Representatives recently. After struggle, they decided that they would send someone to bring Celestine back because he had been a hermit for long enough that nobody had a grudge against him at all. So they voted and they said, well, let's make Celestine the Pope. And they brought him back, and he tried to be a pope, but I think it didn't last more than a couple of months. And he basically said, I can't do this. I'm quitting. And I'm going back to being a hermit. And somehow that allowed a very bad pope to take the office. And that's why Dante is so critical.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
As someone who's raised Catholic, I would simply point out that there are echoes, I believe, of what happened with John the 23rd. Wasn't he a compromise? And because of his age, they thought he was safe, and then they could when he died, they could get down to the business of selecting someone else. But he surprised everyone with his audacity as well. More recently, it echoes the fact that Celestine, I think my note said he was in for 5 months.
Okay.
Benedict was in longer than that, but Benedict actually, breaking with precedent, resigned the papacy. And I think many people saw that actually not as a cowardly act, but as a good thing.
Well, how long was Benedict in?
I'm going to say, 10 years. Is there a Catholic in the audience who could correct me on that? I'll look it up.
Yeah,
how long was Benedict
he
in?
was in there quite a while.
But Benedict was Dante's enemy. I think it was
Sorry, the current Benedict. My apologies. The current Benedict, the one who resigned about 8 years ago.
Oh, okay. The German.
We had the wrong Benedict.
Yeah, the German Benedict. And people, when he, sorry, you got to be careful when you use the word Benedict here. I got it. My problem. My apologies for not providing some context. But the one who resigned recently, I think the idea was that it was, in many quarters, that it was a good thing, that he'd really come to the end of what he could do, and it was time for somebody new. So it wasn't really seen as an act of cowardice.
Yeah, you said 10 years. Did you mean 10 months?
No, you know what? I'm going to look it up. If you keep the discussion going, I'll just Google it. Yeah.
Okay.
10 years. I mean, I think I'd remember somebody was Pope for 10 years, but 10 months. I remember Benedict. He was a blip, but I don't think he was around for 10 years.
Okay, I'll check it out.
We had Ratzinger there.
German one.
Ratzinger, I think didn't he come in? Was he between the Pope John Paul and Paul Pius, who was not the Pius, but the previous Pope there? Was he been between that, or was he between Ratzinger and John Paul? So maybe look that up too. But
okay, well, I think I can tell you that. I think he came between John Paul II and Pope Francis, our current Pope.
Okay, because there was Paul VI was before. Paul VI was after John the 23rd. Paul VI, and then somebody was in there. I thought that was long enough ago because Paul VI, I think it was then, and then John Paul, the Polish Pope came in. I think he was back that far, but you might be right about that. You better double check that.
Okay. I'm actually on Google now. I can give you the length of his time in office. So April 2005 to February of 2013. So it would be just short of 8 years. So I was wrong about the 10. It would have been just short of 8 years.
I was like, because I was not paying attention.
Hey, let's read Dante.
I'm sorry?
Let's read Dante.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's a good idea, but I raise these points simply to say that the issues he raised still live very vividly today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm all for returning to him, but I think we need to recognize that too, that he so compellingly speaks to us today.
Absolutely.
Yes, that is actually a basic theme that recurs over and over within the group, is the realization that although he wrote 702 years ago, or the Commedia was published or made a manuscript 702 years ago. It's very relevant.
Oh, right. That's why it's so current today. To
Yeah.
read it, it's so interesting.
Yeah, and I think it is why we as a group have continued reading it and are even reading it more carefully than we have in the past, because we realize how on many different levels it's still talking to us and about us.
I
So,
really feel good about learning it, kind of knowing it well. I'm really, it's exciting to me that have this opportunity.
as I mentioned before, this is making a great deal of difference to me. I continue to find sources. I'm now reading a thing called The Metaphysics of the Commedia by a professor from Notre Dame, which is absolutely fascinating
I bet.
and exciting to me.
Duncan,
Okay.
Duncan, what's if I could just interject a question? What's the name of that professor from Notre Dame?
His name is Mo Moeves.
Okay.
And if you like arcane philosophy and psychology and theology, highly recommended.
Okay.
Moezs.
V is in Victor.
VS.
Mm-hmm. And Dita, you might be interested. I don't know if you know who Sai Baba is. Are you familiar with? Okay, I thought maybe in your Hindu studies you'd run across Sai Baba. Okay. Well, Mo, obviously is Catholic and is well steeped in Catholic history, but he also has other experiences, and so it's a good thing. I do have to point out that we jumped right into the parsing. We didn't read the whole thing in English, so I guess we're not going to do that. And we jumped right into the Great Refusal. I will hold with the idea that Celestine, that it's not good enough to be a hermit. If you're according to Dante, if your culture or your society or your religion needs you, it's not good enough to just go out and be a hermit. And so Dante's being quite critical of Celestine's. He says it, at least according to the Longfellow translation, who made through cowardice the great refusal.
So maybe Arolini's overdoing it, to the mode of Dante, and leaving it somewhat ambiguous. Maybe his motive was less conscious than she's suggesting.
As we will always find out, there are multiple interpretations of almost anything in Dante.
And I would maintain actually just as part of this discussion to say maybe it really doesn't make so much difference to, in a sense, his metaphysics or his theology, what the identity of this person is. Because he's talking about a group of people, and he's talking about people here in a way that they're sort of banded together as sort of like, I'm thinking in the tradition of the Bible, it's like the great biblical heroes are people like Moses. God calls them and they say, here I am, Lord. Isaiah, Gideon, all these great heroes of the Bible were all people who basically, when they heard the call of God, they stepped forward and they said, pleaded with God, don't send me. Or Joe does another one, don't send me, send somebody else. But they stepped up to the plate, and in a sense, he's saying that these kind of people are really like they're really much worse than the people who hell won't even have. So There's an,
Yeah.
The people who refuse to step up to the plate, so to speak.
exactly.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to read I'm going to read 6 more lines and then turn it over to Dee Dee. So on line 61, forthwith I comprehended and was certain that this sect was of the caitiff wretches, hateful to God and his enemies. Okay? These miscreants who never were alive were naked and were stung exceedingly by gadflies and by hornets that were there.
And you said caitiff or something. Caitiff wretches. What does caitiff mean?
Go ahead, John.
I think it's just he's taking the same word from the Italian because it's cattivi in Italian. I didn't look it up. I think it's sort of cowardly, but I'll do a quick check on that now.
Sinners in general, sinners.
Yeah.
Yeah, caitiff, a contemptible or cowardly person.
Contemptible, sure. These miscreants who never were alive were naked and were stung exceedingly by gadflies and by hornets that were there. These did their faces irrigate with blood, which with their tears commingled at their feet by the disgusting worms was gathered up. And when to gazing farther I betook me, people I saw on a great river's bank, we just left them.
Yeah, we just left them. So let's go back and talk a little bit about lines 64 to 60.
Well, I want to go on record here as saying no torment he describes in the rest of the Inferno would terrify me as much as this.
Yeah, me
The
too.
bugs crawling on me.
Oh, yeah.
And standing on those worms that are eating your blood. I mean, it's as bad as anything else in the Inferno.
Right.
Forever.
It
For
seems to me
eternity.
a severe punishment for indifference.
Trying,
But I think that's his point. I think that's
Well,
his point.
that isn't exactly Christian because Christ forgives them all.
Well, I don't know about that, Dee Dee,
you
because
have to believe and yeah.
Oh yeah, you have to find Christ in your awareness in your soul.
I mean, who are those that are cast into the outer darkness? There would be wailing and gnashing of teeth. I mean, that's pretty harsh. That's from Christ in the Bible. So, at least in the
Once again, you have to remember that there are three virtues which are prominent in the Commedia. But I think I need to do a little. I'm gonna do a little mute here. The three prominent virtues or things in the Commedia are justice, free will, and love. Okay. So the idea that Christ is always going to forgive is not correct. That people have to act as if they want to be forgiven and they have to believe. I mean, this is the whole reason there's an Inferno and a Purgatorio. The Purgatorio is where the people go who are going to be forgiven. But the Inferno are the people who persist.
Yeah, who died persisting.
And still persist in the Inferno.
Yeah, unrepentant.
Unrepentant. So I think that that's an important, it's an important thing. So I want to go once again and point out that in line 63, um, hateful to God and his enemies. So it's the old joke about the person who tries to sell their soul to the devil, and the devil says, "What makes you think I want to buy your soul?" You know? So, and the other thing I'd like to point out is, okay, so 64, these miscreants who never were alive. So that's implying if you don't take a stand, if you never take a stand, you've never lived. And I want to point out, were naked and were stung exceedingly by gadflies and by hornets that were there. So to me, you know, this is like these people are like bureaucrats who don't want to do their job. They just want to stay out of sight for 20 or 30 years so they can get their retirement. And you know, they want to keep themselves, you know, they, as the expression goes, they want to cover their ass at all times. But here in hell, they're naked and they're being stung incessantly. So the very thing that they've tried to avoid all their lives is their punishment.
Catches up with them. So we should move on. DCO could start to read the next group's story.
Yes, yes. These did their faces irrigate with blood, with their tears commingled at their feet. By the disgusting worms was gathered up. And when, to gazing farther, I betook me, people I saw on a great river's bank, whence said I, Master, now would shave to me. More, that that
Yes,
Three
I
lines,
may
please.
know who these are, and what law makes them appear so ready to pass over, as I descend towards the dusky light.
one more verse, DCO.
One more. And
Yeah.
he to me, these things shall all be known to thee, as soon as we our footsteps stay upon the dismal shore of Acheron,
Mhm.
is the river.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we can keep going.
I think we need to talk a little bit about this.
Oh, okay.
Because we are, you know, we left we left the people who never took a stand. And now, you know, we're at people who are on their way deeper into the Inferno.
Gonna cross the river.
Mm-hmm.
Because Caronte was the conductor of the boat that took the souls to the other bank of the river Caronte.
And why they're so eager to go into the Inferno. It's a good thing to think about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Dave Little may be wanting to say something here.
No.
No. Okay. Okay. Desire.
Yeah, that leaves me puzzled, why are they so eager?
Mhm, mhm.
Is it to escape the wasps and hornets and worms?
No,
Well, it's going to be
Is that why they
worse,
want to get across?
but it's going to be bad. It's pretty darn bad down there. So I don't know. Maybe they assume it will be better.
I wonder.
Dante explains it later on, almost at the very end of the canto. He explains why they're eager, that their fear morphs into this eagerness.
say that again, John.
Their fear, which is what they initially are feeling, is changed by divine justice into eagerness to move on or move across the river. That's
It's line 124, I think.
yes, 124 exactly.
Go there, 124, and ready they are to pass over the river. Well, read that.
And ready are they to pass o'er the river, because celestial justice spurs them on, so that their fear is turned into desire.
That's interesting.
But Dante is asking to Virgil, who are those people?
Yeah.
And he said that he's going to explain later on.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Dante's very much in awe of Virgil, and this isn't the only place where he worries that his questions are causing offense to Virgil. There are other places where he expresses his reservations or he keeps quiet. And so he interprets Virgil's reply here as a rebuke, whereas it might not be at all. It might just be, well, I'm going to explain it later.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I mean, but this is once again in the framing of the story. It's always important to keep in mind that Dante is very immature in these early cantos and unsure of himself. And so he's full of doubts and misinterpretations and that's kind of the whole, in some senses, the whole purpose of the Commedia is to give us a detailed description of what kind of lessons and what kind of maturity needs to be achieved in order to move through and up to Paradiso, which is genius.
Yeah, incredible.
There's the same genius poet who's demonstrating his genius through his poetry is also describing himself in these very himself is very immature and ill-informed.
Mm.
Alrighty. I guess we're ready for someone to read from line 82. Who's next on the list here?
78, I think. 70.
78.
Okay. Snesio, you still reading?
Who can go? And he to me, these things shall all be known. to thee as soon as our footsteps stay upon the dismal shore of Acheron. Then, with mine eyes ashamed and downward cast, fearing my words might irksome be to him, from speech refrained I till we reached the river. And lo, towards us coming in a boat, an old man, hoary with the hair of hell, crying, Who unto you, ye souls depraved?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. I
Sorry
think we-
about my poor English.
No, you're doing just fine, Decio. But I think the lines from 76 to 81 need to be looked at.
Are we given any clues as to why why Dante should feel that his question, even his words, whatever, are somehow irksome to Virgil?
Mm-hmm. Good question. Good question. I've got an answer. I don't know if it's the right answer, but I got an answer.
Hmm.
Because, anybody else? Shall I be the one that leaps into the void here?
Please,
Okay,
unless
here
my
we
words,
go.
maybe unless my
I
questions.
mean, actually, Virgil's being very, very. John?
Oh no, I say unless my question is irksome to you. But go ahead, please.
Okay. Okay, I think if we look at lines 76 through 78, Virgil's being very clear. He's just giving a straight up statement. And he to me, these things shall be known. Dante asks a question. The answer to the question is, these things shall be all be known to thee as soon as our footsteps stay upon the dismal shore of Acheron.
Good.
Translated into contemporary language as a hold on, young man, just take it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get
It's-
across the river, you'll have the answer to your question.
Yeah, Dante is too impatient.
Dante's too impatient. Exactly.
All right. All right. Okay.
He wants the answers now.
Don't we all?
Well, that's exactly the point, John. Don't we all? That's what Dante's saying. Hey, I'm not so different than you guys.
Yeah.
You'd be doing the same thing.
Mhm.
If you're as spiritually immature as I was at that time, which, my dear reader, you probably are.
Mhm. Okay. Very good. Okay. Take it.
Okay. And then what happens, look at his reaction to that. 79 through 81. This is Dante's reaction. Then with mine eyes ashamed and downward cast, fearing my words might irksome be to him, from speech refrain I till we reach the river.
So
So he
see,
doesn't know he's being impatient. He just knows that Virgil is
see.
not ready for that question.
So he
Feels-
stays quiet.
Feels, pardon me?
He stays quiet.
Yeah.
But he doesn't stay quiet out of patience. He stays quiet out of shame. Big difference.
He doesn't understand his own lack of wisdom at that point. He just doesn't want Virgil to be displeased with him.
He realized that he did something wrong.
Yep. And he
Well,
doesn't know what it was.
yeah, but the very idea of him doing something wrong, I mean, there's no castigation in these words. Maybe in the Italian there is, I doubt it. And Virgil to me, these things shall be known to thee, as soon as we our footsteps stay upon the dismal shore of Acheron. I mean, that's just clear. That's just like, hey, as soon as we get across here, you'll have the answer to your question.
Do you correspondingly think then that Dante is too quick to feel shame here?
Hmm. Yeah, I think so.
I would say that the Dante who is evolved by the time we get to the end of the poem is a very different Dante.
Correct.
Right.
The Dante expressing these emotions. And this is the interesting thing about the Commedia, which is a little tricky, but we've got two Dantes going on here. The person who's actually writing the poem is the mature Dante, accurately reporting on the immature Dante at the earlier parts of the poem, which is really quite marvelous.
Incredible.
But you know, I think the one thing is why I think I agree with Dave that we're a little too. I mean, he feels shame at this because it's only a few lines later, by the end of the canto, he does get an answer. So it's like, you know, he didn't have to wait until you have to read the rest of the Inferno to find out who these people are and the answer to his question. So you know, that's sort of like, well, okay. I mean, it seems to be kind of an overreaction in a way, but feeling shame at that. But maybe it's just learning to get to know his host, you might say, or his guide.
We will know the name of the people in the next cantos. In the next cantos, along the Inferno, as going on.
Well, yeah, but Virgil does say, he says, you know, later on, he does say who these people are, and he answers. Dante wants to know who are these people, and what law makes them appear so ready to pass over, which we got the answer to that by the end of the time of this third canto, number 3.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just a rough idea.
It's interesting. It's interesting as well that as the poem, even the Inferno, and certainly more in the Purgatorio and Paradiso, as the poem moves on. Well, not the Paradiso because that's Beatrice, but that Virgil becomes much better at anticipating Dante's questions is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dante becomes more confident in asking the questions and not feeling the shame. And I think it's two things. We see the development of the relationship with the people in the poem, the Dante of the poem, but to speak to the Dante who's doing the writing, which you spoke of, Duncan, I think it's also maybe we have a writer who's more comfortable as he develops the relationship between his characters as the poem moves on. So that the poet is growing as a writer too, and his confidence as we move through this poem and its successors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he was just 35 years old.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is an incredibly sophisticated poem.
It is.
I mean, incredibly sophisticated.
If it wouldn't, I don't mean to sound like this is vain learning or something like this, but this reminds me of what you're talking about is how Virgil is, I should say, how Dante is growing in a sense, and he's revealing part of this growth through his writing. Reminds me of something I've started reading a couple of years ago, or the last year or two, a critic, a French, now deceased French philosopher critic by the name of René Girard.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He writes about Proust primarily, and he makes some big points about Proust, à la recherche de temps perdu, about how this novel, in a sense, that novel became Proust's redemption. And actually, Girard doesn't confine this to just Proust. He talks about, the author of Cervantes and other people like this, where they find their redemption in a sense. Their act of writing the novel is in a sense a redemption from the prior people that they were before they started these novels, and the novels themselves are become this act of like a liberation or like a apotheosis almost, that this is such a growth, and it's revealed through the writing of the novel and through the telling of the story, which I find that this is another kind of example of that. He doesn't talk about Dante, but maybe this is why this is such a great poem. And I think that Girard is of the view that this is something that marks all the great literature of the West, or not just great literature. Maybe I shouldn't confine to any part of the world or any time, but that this is something that really defines the greatness of something. It reveals the soul of somebody's growth in that fashion.
You're making me think of a phrase popped into my head: an extended confession, a thorough confession.
Yes, exactly, and that's what these novels, in a way, these novels are really a confession of all the warts and all of these people of the authors as they it's a self-examination and warts and all kind of self-revelation to themselves as much as to the reader.
Right. And the conscious reader is also undergoing this thing, because
Exactly.
I'll make a grandiose statement. You have to forgive me. I'm full of grandiose statements. But are we not, to a certain extent, like those people in the anteroom that are really not fully alive? We're really not paying close attention to what we're doing. And at least to me, is not the reading and the close analysis of Dante, Joyce, any of your great writers, one way that we become more fully alive?
Very true. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that the reading of the novel, or the author is extending an invitation of us to undergo the same kind of critical self-examination that the author underwent in the preparation writing of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And ending up, if you stay with it and study it, learning what he learned.
Yes, yes.
How many people have seen the Kurosawa movie Ikiru, To Live?
I haven't never heard of it.
Okay, I'll write it down. If you're a movie buff of any sort, this is one of the great movies. Ikiru, which means to live. I'll put the English in there.
Akira Kurosawa, yeah.
Kurosawa.
The Seven Samurais.
Yeah, which is a very dramatic movie. Ikiru is a much quieter movie. And it's basically about a bureaucrat who works in a government office in Tokyo, who has spent his life avoiding decisions. And then he goes to the doctor, and the doctor informs him that he has stomach cancer and that he has a very limited amount of time left. And this goads him enough that he decides that he needs to live before he dies. And he does some interesting things. There's actually, in some senses, odd parallels between Ikiru and the Commedia. So, and why did I bring that up?
He has a film also, is a parody of King Lear.
Well, that's actually in a different. That's a different Kurosawa movie, which I can't name right now.
Yeah, I don't remember the name.
Yeah, which is also excellent. Yeah. But Ikiru, I think, is directly relevant to what we're doing now. It's a black
I
and
also
white.
like what's the name? The guy that live in the North Pole. Derzu Uzala.
Oh, yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fantastic film, all right, yeah.
So, okay. Let me go back to here. So we're back at the river. We've gone through the thing. I think we've had a pretty good parsing of there. And then we are actually once again at line 82. Who is the reader after Decio?
John.
John,
John, you mean this John or the other John?
Yeah, John the Younger? or
you, John the Younger.
All right, so, hope nevermore to look upon the heavens. I come to lead you to the other shore, to the eternal shades in heat and frost. And thou that yonder standest, living soul, withdraw thee from these people who are dead. But when he saw that I did not withdraw, he said, by other ways, by other ports, thou to the shore shalt come, not here for passage. A lighter vessel needs must carry thee. And unto him the guide, vex thee not, Charon. It is so willed there, it is so willed there where power is to do that which is willed, and farther question not. Thereat were quieted the fleecy cheeks of him, the ferryman of the livid fen, who round about his eyes had wheels of flame.
Okay, that's probably good.
Okay.
Yeah, nice.
So Dante will not cross the Sharon on across the what is it, Styx on Sharon's boat. Which river is that?
Acaronte.
The Acheron.
Acaronte.
Okay. Okay, Acheron.
On 78, upon the dismal shore of Acheron. Mhm.
There it
So-
is, yeah.
Charon is also a classical figure, is he not?
Yeah.
Okay, so once again, we had the mixing of the Christian and the classical.
Yeah, the description of him here is similar to Virgil's description of him in Book 6 of the Aeneid.
Mm-hmm.
So, which of course Dante would be thoroughly
Sure.
versed in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One thing that struck me is how harsh he is. Woe unto you, ye souls depraved. Because it'd be everybody from somebody who maybe ate too much to somebody who murdered people. And he's lumping everybody together here. But this crowd of people who are going across, most of them, I should think, would have committed the lesser sins, lust or whatever. And it seems to me that he's been on the job too long or something. But he's
He takes his job seriously.
he's pretty harsh with them.
Just like the crowd, the throng who can't even cross the river, they'll never get out. They're going to stay in the Inferno. It's the same sort of sentence, sentencing their souls.
Let me go back again to another. This is a story out of Japan. This is a personal story where I'll explain. I lived in Japan for 6 years, and I had to carry a residence card. And when my wife and I and our young child went back to the United States, when the child was a year and a half old, it was a very difficult trip because the child never made the time change.
Oh,
Oh, boy.
So after being in the States for 3 weeks with a child who was awake all night and asleep all day, we were exhausted.
Oh, boy.
But we got back and we were walking down the street one day, and I was looking a little disreputable. Admittedly, I was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, and I hadn't shaven in a couple of days. And a policeman decided to stop me and ask for my residence card, and I didn't have it.
Hmm.
And so I told him it was back at our house, and they sent my wife back to get it, and they took me to these little postage stamp police stations. And then later on, they told me, they released me and they said, you will receive something in the mail and you will have to come to be interrogated. So I think it was like 3 weeks later, I went to the interrogation station. And what I found out was whether you have murdered 20 people or you just jaywalked across the street, the interrogation, the initial interrogation was all the same.
Boy.
It was grueling, a grueling interrogation that went on for like 3 hours. And that
Yeah.
reminds me that policeman, that detective that interrogated me, reminds me of Charon. Or even though my crime was a ridiculously petty one,
Mhm.
it was, woe unto you, ye souls depraved.
Yeah, yeah.
End of story.
But here,
Sharon's a bureaucrat doing his job mindlessly
but Caronte
without
is
sympathy.
asking,
Imagine it with no imagination, no intellect, asking a question.
No discrimination for here. They're all sinners.
Yeah. Well, that's his big line. Every time you cross the river, Karen, now your job is just to this. Woe unto you, ye depraved people, you lost souls, you damned. And just you say that every time. It's really put the terror of in these souls. Well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
this
then
comes
look
up
at look at 88 through 90.
yeah, and this comes up because the souls, some of the souls you have a lot of sympathy for as you read in the Inferno.
but Caronte is asking to Dante why he is here, because he is alive. He's not a soul.
Right.
And Virgil answers to Caronte, ask him to shut his mouth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this has got to be a shock because
Yeah.
we already know that the idea of a living person going into the Inferno is like,
So his eyes became like a flame. Caronte's eyes became like a flame. He was angry, was terrified to receive this reprimando. No?
Reprimand, yeah.
But he doesn't intimidate Virgil.
mm-hmm. Right. So let's go on. Who's the next reader?
John, the other older John, the old one.
John the Elder.
Okay. Thereat were quieted the fleecy cheeks of him the ferryman of the livid fen, who around about his eyes had wheels of flame. But all those souls who weary were and naked, their color changed and gnashed their teeth together as soon as they had heard those cruel words. God they blasphemed, and their progenitors, the human race, the place, the time, the seed of their engendering and of their birth. Thereafter altogether they drew back, bitterly weeping, to the accursed shore, which waiteth every man who fears not God.
Mhm.
So we're going to be told in a minute that their fear had been turned by justice into desire, but now they seem to have other emotions as well, anger, self-loathing.
Yeah, regret.
Yeah,
Well, they're blaming others for this plight they're now in. They're blaming God and
Mhm.
their progenitors and the human race, the place, the time, the seed of their engendering and of their birth.
Everyone
not-
but those.
That's interesting. This hits me now. This is the third time through that their eagerness to go is quickly um, squashed by Sharon's uh, prediction of where they're going.
Mhm. Mhm.
They didn't know.
They had rushed to the ferry boat, and then when they heard the words, that's when we got but all those souls who weary were and naked, their color changed and gnashed their teeth together as soon as they heard those cruel words. So we might say that Sharon was actually the wake-up call
Yeah.
Yeah.
of where they were and where they were going.
Mhm.
And it's also fascinating to me as in lines 103 to 105, they're blaming everything and everybody
But themselves.
but themselves.
And that you come as we go through the Inferno to those terrible souls who are proud of themselves, who think they're proud they did these horrible things,
They're
even
not,
though they're suffering.
yeah, they're not repentant. And once again, and this is purely a personal interpretation, which is, although the story, the general story is that they will be there forever. I still insist they will be there forever unless they actually repent.
I don't know, because you have like Francesca, who uh, it really isn't her fault she's there, you know?
Whose fault is it? Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. But my question would be, well, if it's not her fault, whose fault is it?
She was helpless. It
Mm,
really was someone else's fault.
Okay, we'll save that thought until we get to Canto 5. And then I'll be interested in hearing what you had to say about whose fault it is for Francesca to be there.
So I guess, Duncan, what you're saying here, and I guess because you've read through this before, what you're saying here is that there's that Dante has, I guess, which might be kind of a heterodox theology here, because I think classic Catholic theology that I was raised in when I took my Baltimore Catechism as a youth was that hell was
Right.
for literally forever. There was no way out. But that's always been, to me, always struck me as being pretty harsh and not exactly. It doesn't actually jibe with the New Testament, but in some ways. But I don't know. It always seems to be, there's always this kind of hope that, well, maybe there's some way out at some point in the end. But as Christ says, with all things, all things are possible with God. So that's kind of
Right.
like
Absolutely.
It really reminds me of the monkey trap. You know what the monkey trap is?
yeah. It's like you have to let go in order to get. You have to release your grasp of whatever you're hanging on to get out of the trap.
Yeah,
So,
right. It's a coconut, and the
Right.
coconut is, tied, and you put a piece of fruit in the coconut, and the monkey comes along and puts his hand through the hole into the coconut and grabs the piece of fruit or food, which makes the hand so big that cannot withdraw the hand.
right.
And the only way out of the monkey trap is if the monkey wises up and lets go, and then can pull the hand back out. Well,
Right.
that to me, and I could be completely wrong, but that to me is actually how hell works.
It does
It's
make sense, and it
a
does
monkey,
make
it's a
sense.
monkey trap. I mean that you're not really that the way the universe is structured and all that is really not to put anybody in hell.
Yeah.
It's a learning process, and some of us have more trouble learning than others. So, but that's a personal prejudice, which I think Dante shares in part.
Oh yeah. It is heterodox. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's important to remember that Dante is not happy with the Catholic Church.
Right.
And he expresses that over and over and over again, to the extent that by the time we get down to the bottom of the Inferno, we got a couple of popes there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just never know who you're going to meet in hell.
That's good.
Okay,
Correct.
so let's read on
108, 109.
109. Okay, and
Yeah.
who's reading?
Uh,
Okay,
Dave.
Dave.
Charon, his eyes red like a burning brand, thumps with his oar the lingerers that delay, and rounds them up and beckons with his hand. And as, by one and one, leaves drift away, in autumn till the bough from which they fall sees the earth strewn with all its brave array, so, from the bank there, one by one, drop all Adam's ill seed, when signaled off the mark, as drops the falcon to the falconer's call. Away they're borne across the waters dark, and ere they land that side the stream, anon, fresh troops this side come flocking to embark. I can read on if you want. I'm just not sure how big a chunk you want for analysis.
This is a very intuitive decision for the most part. And so unless you want to stop or unless someone stops you, you can read on. Typically what I do after I come to a period, I allow a little bit of a space of 2 or 3 seconds, just in case someone wants to jump in.
Okay.
And if no one wants to jump in, and if I don't have anything to say about it, then I continue on.
Alrighty. So I guess I'll put it out there. Does anybody want to jump in, or do you want me to read Virgil's a little speech here?
On we go.
I'll take the silence as that I should carry on. Then said my courteous master, see, my son, all those that die beneath God's righteous ire, from every country come here, every one. They press to pass the river, for the fire of heavenly justice stings and spurs them so that all their fear is changed into desire. By this passage, good souls never go. Therefore, if Charon chide thee, do thou look what this may mean. 'Tis not so hard to know.
Mhm. All right.
No, it strikes me in a way is that there, what he's speaking of here is that the sense of divine justice in a way is kind of works as an odd magic here upon these people's fear turning into desire, as if they were deluded in a way by what divine justice is. And they think in a way, perhaps they're sort of deluded into thinking that this divine justice is somehow their reward, whereas in fact it's really not. And it's just this condemnation, damnation that in a sense makes them desire fulfilling God's will in this. And it's a tricky thing, but it's and almost like it works in a divine justice kind of way.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But is this not the way that sin itself works?
Well,
Most most sins are a form of desire for money. Hmm. Jesse, are you talking here?
No, I'm lost. In what line are you? Sorry.
Oh, okay. We are actually talking about line 126,
Okay, thank you.
124 through 126. So they are to pass over the river because celestial justice spurs them on. So their fear is turned into desire.
well, I'm
So
thinking. Well,
they've committed one of the deadly sins, and they excused themselves at the time, so they did it. And I don't think real celestial justice spurs them on, but what they imagine, they think that they're justified. That's what I think it means.
That's what I'm saying, is that they really is there's a way we all have a self-deception is maybe part of the overall thing of sinning, is that we every one of us, I think, can justify, well, I did these things, but I'm basically a good person, so God will forgive me for all that if I do believe in God to begin with. But somehow we can always rationalize even some of our worst sins in many cases. Whereas
Yeah.
I think in a way that it's that kind of self-delusion that in a sense makes them think that this celestial justice is what drives them to saying, well, here, this in a sense is my reward here. I'm now really going to heaven after all, maybe. And so
yeah, I think so. That's how it seems to me.
Yeah. So we want this. We're finally saved. We're saved at last, anyhow.
Mhm.
Or it could be as trivial as, well, there's a boat. I want to get a good seat.
Yeah, we're more moving on here. This is onwards and upwards. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
then back at line 101, their color changed and gnashed their teeth together as soon as they had heard those cruel words. So their fear was changed into desire, maybe like John said, from self-deception.
Yeah.
But now that the truth has been revealed to them, they react with, I guess they grow pale.
Yeah, and this is Virgil explaining what happened to them, why they were eager. This is all a quote of Virgil explaining to Dante.
Okay, my son, yeah, that's true. Up in 121, my son, being Dante, the courteous master, Virgil, said to me, "Oh, those who perish in the wrath of God here meet together out of every land." So, yeah, you're right. That's all Virgil stuff.
Those people defied God.
That's right.
Mhm. My favorite definition of or explanation of sin um, is actually, as I understand, taken from the Aramaic word called hamartia. And hamartia, the translation of hamartia, it's an archery term.
A what?
It's an archery, bow and arrow term,
Oh, Archer. Yeah.
and it means to miss the mark.
Hmm.
So the idea of the sinner thinks that they are doing something which is going to bring them something good, uh, but because they're deluded, they miss the mark, and the opposite happens.
Yeah. Deluded into thinking they got away with their what was the word about Ulysses? Their what's the matter with me? Pushing beyond what's acceptable. I can't remember the word. They think that they had pushed beyond what was acceptable, but it turns out it was okay, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hamartia also occurs in Aristotle's Poetics. I think we've translated it as tragic flaw, but again, it's got that sense of an arrow missing the mark.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
very much. Yeah, I believe David Bohm, the physicist, is where I got that from.
Okay.
And I'm not very well grounded in a lot of things, so it's good to learn more. Okay, well, I think 27 through 29 is pretty straight ahead. Let us.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I just want to note one thing. Remember, Dante asked the question, and Virgil said, "Well, you'll get your answer soon." And Dante was ashamed and worried that he had offended him. But when Virgil does answer, is very affectionate. My son,
Oh,
he calls him.
Mhm.
So Virgil's annoyance is clearly in Dante's mind.
right. Yeah.
Not
Mm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Virgil uh, didn't, because he doesn't just answer the question here. He starts with a term of endearment.
Mhm. Mhm.
That last two lines of Virgil's, and hence if Sharon doth complain of thee, well mayest thou know now what his speech imports. So this is like a warning.
Mhm.
If you transgress and don't repent, you'll be in this flock doomed.
No, no, see, this is actually directly to Dante and Dante's situation, that Dante is alive. You know, if you look at 127, this way there never passes a good soul, and hence if Charon does complain of thee, well mayst thou know now what his speech imports. So, you know, at least from my point of view, he's explaining to Dante, this is why Sharon, you know, he's never seen or hardly ever seen a living person. That's one thing. and he deals all day, every day, 24/7 with sinners.
Souls.
Yeah, was the souls of sinners. And so he's, you can't expect someone in that kind of job to automatically recognize someone who's not a sinner bound for hell. And also you have to expect that he's going to be very confused by all of a sudden having an embodied person wanting to get in the boat. Okay, I suggest been finished. Okay. I guess I'll read the last 6 lines and then we'll take stock. Okay, this being finished, all the dusk campaign trembled so violently that of that terror the recollection bathes me still with sweat. The land of tears gave forth a blast of wind and fulminated a vermilion light, which overmastered me in every sense, and as a man whom sleep has seized, I fell. Let me do this.
John, what is the word in champagne in 130? All the dusk champagne. What is the word in Italian?
Campagna. It's just
Campaign,
like
like
a field or
companions,
something. Like a field.
companions.
So it's campagna, like in French, countryside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
countryside.
But
And here we have a thunder, and we hear the sound of the thunder, and is trembling. And the next is just the sound. We just saw the light of the sound of the thunder. In the next canto, we'll hear the sound, because the speed of light is extremely strong. The speed of light is bigger than the speed of the sound. So the light we see in this canto,
Oh,
and the
that's
sound
interesting.
we see in the next canto. And
Well,
so he is dismayed. He lost his senses. He lost his senses. He starts sleeping.
interesting. Wow. There's a whole element of science in the commedia, things like that.
The speed of light against the speed of sound.
Yeah.
And first we see the light of the lightning, and then we heard the sound.
Yeah. So interesting. Never thought of
this
it.
is physics.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I was actually interpreting that differently. But your explanation makes good sense.
Because the second line of the next canto is related to this, the thunder.
And Barolina goes into how you never know how Dante got across the Sharon, the Acheron. You don't know how he got across the river. He doesn't describe it. Leaves it to your imagination.
He has to cross to enter the Inferno, no? Like the other souls.
But you don't know. It's left to your imagination how he got there.
Yeah, okay. Because there are 4 rivers in the Inferno. And the lake in the bottom is a lake, big lake, where Satanas is there, where Lucifer.
It's so interesting too how this thunder presence comes up in Joyce, because Joyce is heavily influenced by
Finnegan's
Dante.
Wake, we have 10 thunders. No?
What?
In Finnegan's Wake, we have 10 thunders with
Yeah.
1,001 lines,
Right.
1,001 letters. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's fiction or reality that Joyce was terrified by thunder.
Yes, yeah. Is in his
Huh.
biography. Yeah.
So, I think your explanation is absolutely correct, but I'm going to share my explanation anyway. And my explanation is this being finished, meaning the transport across the river, all the dusk champagne trembled so violently that of that terror the recollection. So the dusk champagne, I was interpreting that as actually being the souls that were transported across the river at the same time as Dante. And that when they actually land on the other side of the Acheron, the full fear of what's happening to them suddenly becomes real to them. And they, as a group, they tremble violently.
They realize in what state they are.
They realize what state they are, and as a group, they tremble. And that Dante, being sympathetic, breaks out in a cold sweat and then faints. But
Faints, yeah. He faints, yeah. He also faints in the Canto 5.
Yeah, he
Number
faints
5.
regularly.
E cade come un corpo morto cade. Cadi come un corpo morto cade.
yeah, all right. Other comments about Canto 3?
Well, just this, I guess then, so we leave it then that Beatty is right to say that we really don't know how Dante gets from one side and into hell from over the river Charon. That this is like it's obscured by his fact. He faints and then he wakes up again in hell. Is that pretty much?
And Sharon doesn't let him on the boat, so it's got to be some other way.
He doesn't cross the Acheron. I'm just saying, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this is what Hollander says. Dante's falling on consciousness and again indicates his inability to deal with the overwhelming experience of his crossing into the realm of hell proper. An inability apparently shared by the poet, who simply does not tell us how he crossed the river.
Very good.
But inability, I argue with the word inability.
Okay.
Because he might just not have wanted to go there, as far as how to describe what happened to him.
Okay, well, Hollander goes on to say, by the way, this is from the Dante Lab Dartmouth .edu, which is a great site if you're not familiar with it. And this is Robert Hollander. The question of how Dante crosses the Acheron is much debated.
As usual.
The pointed lack of concrete reference to the means by which he's transported is a sign either of the poet's reticence or confusion, or of his having set a little problem for his readers.
That's what I think.
All right. So that's good. And this is, to me, a sign we're making progress, because actually I don't think I realized on the first two readings that many of us in the group have had that we didn't ever get that explanation.
Okay.
All right. So decisions to be made, because it is 2:35. And I don't know what your time schedule is, but I would like to take a poll of how many people can stick around to at least read the English of Canto 4. And So let me take a poll there. How many can stick around for that? It usually doesn't take very long to do that.
Yeah, I'm good. Yep.
I'm not sure. I'm supposed to be at Harriet's at 4, but I'm not sure if that was settled. I'll
Oh,
text her.
no, that's, you can, this is fine. There's no pressure on the other end.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
Well, then I can read through 4,
Can read through 4. Okay, then the other question is.
but then I won't have time to, it'll be too late for me to come over, Harriet.
that's okay. We can work something else out.
Okay, well, let's see what time we finished. I just have to be back here at 6. Excuse
Okay.
me.
Oh, okay. So if there's time pressures there, I was going to suggest we read both the Italian and the English, but if we can go with just the English for now, is that okay? John, Decio, is it okay just to read the?
Okay.
Okay. In that case, we will use the same reading list. And I guess I'm the first reader, and we will start on Canto 4. Yeah, okay, so Inferno, Canto 4. So he fainted at the end of Canto 3. Broke the deep lethargy within my head, a heavy thunder, so that I upstarted, like to a person who by force is wakened. And round about I moved my rested eyes, uprisen erect, and steadfastly I gazed to recognize the place wherein I was. True is it that upon the verge I found me of the abysmal valley dolorous, that gathers thunder of infinite ululations. Obscure, profound it was, and nebulous, so that by fixing on its depths, my sight nothing whatever I discerned therein. Next.
Let us descend now into the blind world, began the poet, pallid utterly. I'm sorry, my pages are stuck. I will be first, and thou shalt second be. And I, who of his color was aware, said, how shall I come if thou art afraid, who art wont to be a comfort to my fears? And he to me, the anguish of the people who are below here on my face depicts that pity which for terror thou hast taken. Let us go on, for the long way impels us. Next.
Thus he went in, and thus he made me enter the foremost circle that surrounds the abyss. There, as it seemed to me from listening, were lamentations known, but only sighs that tremble made the everlasting air. And these arose from sorrow without torment, which the crowds had, that many were and great, of infants and of women and of men. To me, the Master good, thou dost now ask, what spirits these which thou beholdest are? Now we will have thee know, ere thou go further, that they sinned not, and if they merit had, 'tis not enough, because they had not baptized, which is the portal of the faith thou holdest. Next.
And if they were before Christianity in the right manner, they adored not God, and among such as these am I myself. For such defects, and not for other guilt, lost are we, and are only so far punished, that without hope we live on in desire. Great grief seized on my heart when I heard, because some people of much worthiness I knew who within that limbo were suspended. Tell me, my master, tell me, thou my lord, began I, with desire of being certain of that faith which overcometh every error. Came anyone by his own merit hence, or by another's, was blessed thereafter? Next.
John.
Oh, John, turn on your sound, John.
Oh, sorry, I had a dog a minute ago. And
If
he
you,
who understood my covert speech replied, I was a novice in this state, when I saw hither come a mighty one, with sign of victory incoronate. Hence he drew forth the shade of the first parent, and that of his son Abel, and of Noah, of Moses the lawgiver, and the obedient, Abraham, patriarch, and David, king, Israel with his father and his children, and Rachel, for whose sake he did so much, and others many, and he made them blessed. And thou must know that earlier than these, never were any human spirits saved. Next, please.
Well, thus he spake, we still made no delay, but past the wood. I mean the wood as 'twere of souls ranged thick as trees. Being now some way, not far, from where I'd slept, I saw appear a light, which overcame the shadowy face of gloom, and made a glowing hemisphere. 'Twas yet some distance on, yet I could trace so much as brought conviction to my heart that persons of great honor held that place. O thou that honorest every science and art, say, who are these whose honor gives them claim to different customs and a sphere apart? And he to me, their honorable name, still in the world resounding as it does, wins here from heaven the favor due to fame. Next.
In the meantime, a voice was heard by me. All honor be to the preeminent poet. His shade returns again that was departed. After the voice had ceased and quiet was, 4 mighty shades I saw approaching us. Semblance had they not, sorrowful nor glad. To say to me began my gracious master, him with that falchion in his hand behold, who comes before thee even as their Lord. That one is Homer, poet sovereign. He who comes next is Horace, the satirist. Third is Ovid, and the last is Lucan. Because to each of these with me applies the name that solitary voice proclaimed, they do me honor, and in that do well. Next, please.
thus I beheld assemble the fair school of that Lord of the song preeminent, who all the o'er the others like an eagle soars. When they together had discoursed somewhat, they turned to me with signs of salutation. And on beholding this, my master smiled, and more of honor still, much more they did me, in that they made me one of their own band, so that the 6th was I, mid so much wit. Next.
As we went on as far as to the light, sing sayings, this becoming to keep silent, as was the saying of them where I was. We came unto a noble castle's foot, 7 times encompassed with lofty walls, defended round by the fair rivulet. This we passed over, even as firm ground. Through portals 7 I entered with these sages. We came into a meadow of fresh verdure, People were there with solemn eyes and slow, of great authority in their countenance. They spake but seldom and with gentle voices. Thus we withdrew ourselves off one side into an opening luminous and lofty, so that they all of them were visible. Next.
There opposite, upon the green enamel, were pointed out to me the mighty spirits, whom to have seen I feel myself exalted. I saw Electra with companions many, amongst whom I knew both Hector and Aeneas, Caesar in armor with gerfalcon eyes. I saw Camilla and Penthesilea on the other side, and saw the king Latinus, who with Lavinia his daughter sat. I saw that Brutus who drove Tarquin forth, Lucretia, Julia, Marcia, and Cornelia, and saw alone apart the Saladin. Next, please.
When I had lifted up my brows a little, the master I beheld of those who know sit with his philosophic family. All gaze upon him, and all do him honor. There I beheld both Socrates and Plato, who nearer him before the others stand. Democritus, who puts the world on chance, Diogenes, Anaxagoras, and Thales, Zeno, Empedocles, and Heraclitus. Next, please.
Dioscorides, who named the qualities Tully and Orpheus, Linus, and thereby good Seneca, well skilled to moralize. Euclid, the geometrician, Ptolemy, Galen, Hippocrates, and Avicenna, Averroes, who made the commentary. Nay, but I tell not all that I saw then. The long theme drives me hard, and everywhere the wondrous truth outstrips my staggering pen. The group of 6 dwindles to 2. We fare forth a new way, I and my guide withal, out from that quiet place to the quivering air, and reach a place where nothing shines at all.
Boom, 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 boom. All right. So for those who like to prepare a little bit in advance, I would suggest taking a little bit of look at both this canto and the next one. It looks to me like a lot of Canto 4 is just going to be talking about names. There's a few framing points which are valuable to take a look at, but compared to the first 3 cantos, I think maybe this will be a little easier and quicker to go through.
In line 131, there is an allusion made by Joyce in Ulysses. Maestro di color chi sano. It's a reference to Aristotle.
Okay. All right.
Is that in the Wandering Rocks chapter?
Sorry?
Is that in the Wandering Rocks chapter of Ulysses? Where does it appear?
I don't remember, but it's an allusion. Yeah, I'll try to find. Trust me.
Okay. Well, everybody, I hope that the end of the world is in the, oh, there we go. There's a Freudian slip. I hope the end of the year is a safe and peaceful one for you. And the next time that we meet, it will be on the 2nd or the 3rd? There's
I
Harriet.
think it's the third.
Third, yeah.
The 3rd, okay. Well, I hope as many of you can come back as can, but of course we know there are other things that come up in life. Dave, thank you very much for showing up today. I hope you'll join us
Thank
again.
you.
Okay. For those who might want to participate, there will be a Ulysses reading. We're finishing up Penelope. on the Facebook, the James Joyce Readers, starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.
The allusion to the maestro di color che sanno is in Nestor.
Ah, okay.
Esther. Okay.
No, sorry, Proteus.
Proteus.
Proteus. Okay.
Proteus.
Thank you.
Proteus.
Thank you.
Because Proteus is related to philosophy, so on.
Right.
Mhm. A lot. Okay. I'm going to click the big red button and
Okay. Bye, everybody.
I'll
Bye.
Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year.